Hi, everyone. I am so excited to have my two guests here today, Miss Arriyanna Patton and Mr. Anthony Mitchell. My name is Avia Solomon. I live in Georgia, and I am an elections fellow for AMP. And today, our live stream is all about the power of the youth vote and the power of your voice as a voter. So, for our first question, could you briefly introduce yourselves?
All right, you can go first, lady.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Arriyanna Patton. I'm a second-year law school student at Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston, Texas. A little separate from that, I'm also the Black Girl Politico. I'm the founder of the Black Girl Politico, which is basically an Instagram account that talks about voting issues. It talks about politics. It gives you the inside of politics, and also it gives you political jargon to, I guess, to help you a little bit better understanding how politics works. I am a graduate from Spelman College, and I received my BA in political science in 2018. I've had a slew of political internships, and so this is one of the reasons why I created the Black Girl Politicos, because I understand political jargon a little better than most people, and so I wanted to be able to help out those that didn't understand it and wants to know what's going on in politics and how it affects them. So that's a little bit about me.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Anthony Mitchell, founder and CEO of Engagement Impact, which is a consultant agency geared towards helping youth and young professionals be personally and professionally successful. We specialize in brand management and strategy, not so much political, but professional training and leadership development. I'm super excited to be joined by the Black Girl Politico herself, as well as to be featured here with AMP Global Youth, which is doing amazing work around helping young people not only amplify their voices, but to just, make a change and to be the young people that we all know them to be, which are change makers. And I'm super excited to just be here and to talk about something that's super important, which is civic engagement, but more specifically, the 2020 election cycle, which we have seen to be completely unique, but we are definitely going to dive more into that. So yeah, that's more about What of Us, and we're excited to be here.
Great, thank you. So our next question, can you explain why you are voting in this election?
So we've experienced like some collective traumas of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've had the largest uprising regarding racism this year. And so, I think well, one thing I would like to say is it's really about what's going on in the world, but then also it's about, as a Black woman, it's about Black lives actually matter. And so I am voting because this is more than just a presidential election. Your local offices matter, your state government matters. And so, I'm wanting to put people in that care about my life, but not just my life, but the life of my community and the life of others. And so that's why I'm voting. I want my voice to be heard. And I want the voices of my community and the collective to be heard as well.
I think back to, and everything that Ariana said is completely, I'm on the same wave with it. I think what gets me fired up to vote is knowing that there are concerted efforts around the country to make sure that people of color, especially Black people, have been suppressed, not only historically, but now. Right? And as you think about that more and more, there are systemic and systematic ways in which Black people are being disenfranchised from something as simple as voting. Because people who are for the status quo and who benefit from it want to make sure that they continue to have their power and to continue to take away power from communities of color. Now, for me, I am super excited to vote in this election, not only because of those things, but because we have a real opportunity to address a lot of the issues that have been facing this country for a long time, especially systemic racism. We're talking about healthcare being on the ballot. We're talking about our international relationships with our allies and folks that would look to do harm to our country. We're talking about the very soul of this country is literally on the ballot. People can't afford to sit on their hands and to sit at home unless you've already voted. But folks who haven't yet voted or say that they're on the fence, you really can't be on the fence for this. We need everybody to to step out and to do the things that we need to do, which are vote and hold your elected officials accountable. You know, this election cycle is immensely consequential. And as we think about what's going to happen after November 3rd, or even the months that are come, no matter who's in office, we have to do a good job of healing this country, right? There are real racial, systemic, economic, healthcare, education disparities that have been exacerbated because of this COVID-19 pandemic. And so when you think about all that we've done and how literally generations of progress are on the verge of being reversed, there's too much at stake for us not to vote.
Thank you guys so much. I agree with everything that you guys mentioned. And speaking of disenfranchisement and voter suppression, that's actually the topic of our next question. So this has been a major topic of discussion this past year, from removing voters from rolls to closing down polling places. And so what can we do as citizens to help combat voter suppression?
So I think the first thing you have to realize is, what is voter suppression? You know, when we think about voter suppression, we think about what happened to our ancestors, just like the literacy tests, the poll taxes, the grandfather clauses, the looking at how many bubblegum pieces were in the jar. That's no longer a thing, right? So now voter suppression is stricter voter ID laws, or purging eligible voters from rolls, and for like illegitimate reasons. So, I mean, that's the first thing that we have to look at when we think about voter suppression, is knowing what voter suppression is and what it looks like. And so ways that we can combat that is, one, making sure that you have the correct voter identification. If there's anything that your state requires, going online and researching it to make sure that everything that you have matches up with what they need. Also getting the word out, letting people know what voter suppression is and like how you can combat it. Creating panels such as this, and also, talking to the community. Instagram is a big thing. Social media is a big thing. Talking about it with your friends, talking about it with your family. Because of what's going on today in the world, it should be known that voter suppression is a real thing. Voter suppression is alive, and that it's affecting mostly minorities. And it affects Black women, Black men, Hispanic women, Hispanic men. It affects everyone, even just women in general. So, getting out and getting the word out that, hey, this is what's happening to our communities, and this is how we can combat it.
Yeah, that beautifully said, Arriyanna. I think one of the biggest things that has come about as a result of what we've been seeing is the voter suppression or voter protection hotline, and that's 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Once again, that's 1-866-OUR-VOTE. The Blueprint Institute, which is a new organization that has been charged with the task of helping HBCU students, both current and graduates of HBCUs, become more savvy in the public service realm and to help them get into the public sector. They just put out a great infographic about knowing your rights, about what voting is, but not only what voting is, what rights do you have? You have the right to stay in line, even if it's a long line. You have a right to request a paper ballot if the machine is not working. You have a right to not be harassed in line, right, as you're waiting for your vote. You also have a right to call for help and call this protection hotline that I was mentioning before if there's any kind of fraudulent activity or any kind of suspicious activity that you feel is going on at whatever precinct or wherever you are in the country, right? Knowing that and understanding that is important, because there will be people to try and disenfranchise you and persuade you not to vote, because again, there are people who are gravely concerned that the status quo is about to be disrupted. And that's because a whole bunch of young people are getting out to vote. A whole bunch of people of color are turning out in record numbers. But put simply, there's too much at stake, and voter suppression is a real thing. It's racially motivated. It's sexually motivated against, certain genders, but it's also economically motivated when you think about polling location. Let's use Georgia. My boss is a congressman from Georgia, and both of you live in Georgia, so you understand this. There are certain precincts that you can go to just a county away where there is no line, right? You can get in and out within 5 minutes, and then just next door in the neighboring county, you're waiting 5 hours. Think about that, right? And that's, usually in your more affluent districts and your affluent counties that you'll see people not waiting in line for 4 or 5 hours. Ask yourself, why is that? And then understand that this is a system that's put in place to disenfranchise people who are in poor communities, people who are in communities of color, and people that have traditionally been disenfranchised from voting in general.
That
And
is.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And to add to that, like for instance, right now I'm in Georgia. I currently live in Texas because I'm in law school, but I never received my absentee ballot. And that was a major thing for me. I had to actually fly from Texas to Georgia just to vote. So it's important to know your rights and to go out and to vote. And I was fortunate enough to be able to fly here, but there's a lot of people that's not the same, same circumstance. And so it's important that we get out, we vote, so that these issues won't happen anymore. And even if it doesn't happen right now, because it takes time to build and it takes time for, policies to be in place.
Thank you guys so much. I totally agree. Like my mom, she actually mentioned that when she went to go vote this past week, I'm actually in the 13th district of Georgia. And so she went to our local courthouse to vote and she could not stay in line because it was just so long. And she went to, I think, Cobb County, possibly, and the line or another polling place, and the line was that quick. So I totally agree with everything you guys mentioned. And so if you guys are just joining us, we're talking about the importance of voting and voter suppression and how to remain cognizant of it. Our next topic is, so for those people who are becoming more involved in activism and politics, for those people who want to make more change in their community, even after this unprecedented election cycle is over, how can people stay involved in these things that they're interested in after November 3rd?
So, you can go ahead, Ari. So, it's not as hard as you think. When we go and vote, and we're telling the big push right now is for folks to cast their ballots either, you can't mail in anymore, but dropping their ballots off the ballot box or going into early voting, waiting in lines and things like that up until they close on November 3rd. After that is when the real work begins, right? Voting is the easy part. The next part in that is holding our elected officials accountable. And both Ari and I touched on this a little bit when we were talking about, who is going to be in office afterwards, thinking about not only at the federal level, when you think about your senator, your congressman, and even the president and vice president, but county commissioner, when you're talking about city council, when you're talking about the mayor, you're talking about police chief, right? Those folks are elected by you, and you have the ability to hold them accountable by saying, hey, look, you said when you ran, you were going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, we're seeing that you're not matching up to what you're saying. Your actions aren't aligning with what you said. And so now we're going to hold you accountable by continually putting pressure on you and letting our voices be heard at town hall meetings, at different things that are going on locally, but also writing your congressman, writing your senator, even writing to the president. That's something that you can do. And then if it becomes extreme enough, or they're just not, holding up their end of the deal, that they made promises during their campaigns or promises, while they were seeking your vote, you can vote them out at the end of their term, right? But we always want to try and work with folks to try and, get the surgence of the things that we want for our community, whether it's, equal pay for women, whether it's, not policing Black bodies in ways where it's state-sanctioned violence, right? Funding our education system in a way that allows Title I schools and affluent districts to have resources that are both available to them, and making it easier for folks to go to college, things like that. These are things that we all care about, regardless of if you're Black, white, Asian, whatever, right? People want to have good paying jobs. They want to be able to provide for their families, and they want to be able to, pursue their dreams and their passions and their goals without being inhibited by state-sanctioned violence or systemic racism or economic injustices. These are all things that we all want. So, but I'm not going to keep talking more. I know, all right, I see the gears turn. I know you want to jump in here.
No, you're actually saying everything that I was going to say. No, but seriously, like hold the people that are elected accountable, most definitely, because they got in on promises and that which they need to keep. And so then you need to make sure that you hold them accountable for their promises. If they said, hey, we're going to fund more to the educational systems, then you need to hold them accountable for that. If they say, hey, we're going to defund the police, you need to hold them accountable for that, because the problem is that they have these promises, but they don't hold up to it. They get into office and then that was just enough, was just getting into office, right? And so also another thing that you can do is just stay updated on the issues. When they say that, hey, I'm all for education, okay, but when you look at the legislation, you look at, the legislation that they signed their name to, does what they say reflect on that legislation, right? If they don't, and then if they don't, like Anthony said, remove them from office, vote them out. One thing that I do to stay updated on legislation is I look, it's easy as a Google search. You type in bills currently before Congress, and all of the bills that's currently before Congress pops up, and like you can kind of go in and see, okay, what bill majorly affects me and my community, and you can look and you can search, and then also you can see, okay, did my representative, is their name signed onto this bill? If so, and if it's something that you don't agree to, like Anthony said, you can reach out to your representative and say, hey, I am not okay with this bill. I'm not okay with the fact that you signed this bill. These were the promises that you said, and that's not aligning to this. So, hey, we want you to vote no, or hey, we want you to, remove yourself from this bill. Something, to that. Locally, I know I stay in this, I'm from the state of Georgia. And so one thing that I do is to stay up top of my Georgia representatives is I type in on Google, track legislation in Georgia. And so you're able to see everything, all legislation that's currently within the Capitol, and you're able to vote, or you're able to see who voted on it and look and see if your state representative voted on it. So it's more so like Anthony said, the hard part is, of course, the easy part more so is voting. The hard part is holding people accountable for their promises.
Thank you, guys. So we talked about, the importance of making sure that you're voting, staying informed, holding your elected officials accountable. I'm only 16 years old, and so right now I'm not able to vote. So I've actually written a letter to a representative before, but aside from that, staying informed, what can people who aren't of voting age yet do to make a difference in their communities?
Okay, I'll take this one. So when I was 16, so long ago, when I was 16, one thing that I did was, I know we're virtual now, but one thing that I did was I held a town hall meeting within my school system, within my school. We had like little current debates. And so I was, at the time, I was Obama, and then, one of my friends were his opponent, and we like kind of had like a back and forth talking about the issues, like the current issues, what they've stated that they would do. And so I think that's fun because it also gets the crowd invited, or the students involved, and you get to understand what's going on, and they get to understand as well. But also just talking about it with your friends and family, right? And just understanding their views on the issues, and then that way you can kind of help you to mold your views, because you're mostly influenced by your family and friends, right? And so if you understand how politics and legislation work from them, but also like doing your own research, then you'll be able to kind of create an opinion of your own political opinion. So when it's time for you to vote, you already know, like, okay, this is how this works. This is how, this is the people that I want to vote for. I know whether or not I want to vote Democratic or Republican, and if my family are, they vote either way, then I can choose to decide, okay, maybe I don't like the issues, and maybe I do want to vote this way, I know that, I don't know, when I was 16, actually, I was able to shadow a legislator, like a state legislator at the Georgia Capitol. I don't know if they're still doing that, but you can always see, I know that the session will start in the spring, so you can always check to see if that's still a thing and whether or not they will be allowing people to shadow them. And then you can kind of see, it will supplement your classroom education. So you're able to see, how a bill is created, what does your representative do on a day-to-day basis, because it's different to read about it, but it's fun to see it in live action. And then another thing is you can volunteer for registration drives. You can canvass for your favorite candidate. You can learn about, their issues, and then also go out and tell people to vote for them. That's a fun way to, get into the political process. And also you can serve as a poll worker. If you didn't know, 41 states allow you to. You have to check and see what states, but 41 states allow you to work as a poll worker. So it's really just, researching and finding that out. But it's, you don't have to just vote to stay a part of the political process. You can research, you can do a lot of things in order to stay on top of it.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to follow that up, but I'm going to try. There's a couple things that you can do. You can do stuff personally with your friends and with your family, and then you can do stuff that are actually outside of like your immediate network. So I'm going to start with personally. One of the things that you definitely can do is read. I guess I'm a little bit of a nerd because I like history and I like understanding how things work. And so I would read books, I would read articles, and this is probably something that when I was in high school at 16, I would definitely do that. I was also in the student government. I was our class representative. This had to be like my junior year or something. And what we would do is we would organize field trips to go to the state capitol, like Arriyanna was saying, just so people can see, what is actually going on. I remember going to the floor of the Louisiana state capitol. I'm originally from Louisiana, so unfortunately I'm not a Georgian, yeah. But we would take trips to the Louisiana state capitol and see the House floor, see Senate committee rooms. And one of the big attractions was like Huey P. Long, who is a former governor, was assassinated in the state capitol. So there's like all kinds of stuff there. And it's also near the Louisiana Supreme Court. So we'd also take trips there so people can understand that these things we're talking about in a textbook have real implications, right? So that's one thing that we would do. We'd also invite, local politicians like the mayor of the city, the school board superintendent. We'd invite, even the mayor of, neighboring districts and stuff like that, so that people could see who these people that are making decisions on behalf of not only them, but their families and all kind of things like that. I asked, my fellow classmates, what do you care about? And then we try to get somebody who works on that to try and, come into our school and talk about it. And people really like that because for a lot of people, politics and policy is this mysterious thing. And there's like a ether that all this stuff comes from. And, they feel like they have no power. So they can't trust the system. When in all actuality, that is a facade. And that is something that is told by a lot of people who unfortunately are of color and of low economic backgrounds and socioeconomic status to try and convince you that you have no skin in the game. When in all actuality, if communities of color turn out at rates that we've been seeing and continue to do that, they will have all the cards and they'll hold all the power in terms of determining who's going to be in office and what's going to happen once they get into office, right? If you think about if the Black community had not, voted in bloc for the Democratic Party, their candidate likely would not win. Or previously, when mostly Black people were conservatives and they voted in the Republican Party, the Republican Party wouldn't have won, right? So when you're thinking about the power of your voice and your vote and how when you mobilize communities, that literally determines elections, right? That literally determines who is able to decide things on your behalf. So going back to what I was previously saying, you can read, you can educate yourself and understand the issues for yourself so that then you could then share it with your family, with your friends, and have informed conversations. You can also organize with your friends to bring the Capitol and the legislature closer to your friends so that it's understandable to folks, right? And it's not this mysterious thing and people are just like in back rooms and dark alleys making deals, which doesn't happen. That's not a thing, right? But you have to make that real for folks, right? And then the last thing I would say is you can definitely intern for political parties. I've done it before. I used to intern for the Louisiana Democratic Party. This is years and years ago. You can intern at Congress for your representative if you can make it out to DC. But even if you can't, you can intern in their district office, right? I remember having interns as early as 15 years old who worked for Girl Scouts of America, and they would come in and intern every summer in our office, right? You know, you can do those things to keep yourself a part of the process, whether, you know, that's on the official side, if you want to be a part of, you know, the folks once they're in office, or if you want to be on the political side with helping candidates or helping parties or whatever that is, whatever suits your fancy, you can do that. And it doesn't have to be until you're 18 after you're voted. It doesn't have to be until you're 21 after you graduated college. You can do these things now, right? One of the fondest memories that I have, and then I'm going to stop because I know you have other questions, but one of the fondest memories that I have is when I was working in a Senate office and a group of fifth grade students wrote into us about issues that they care about. Like, you know, they had all kind of stuff. It wasn't like a well-written essay, but what it was real, right? And that's what people who are these are fifth graders talking about. We want police reform. We want gun violence control. We want, you know, healthcare for our grandparents, right? You know, fifth graders. If fifth graders can organize themselves and do that, there's no reason that somebody that's 16 or who's in high school or even in college can go off and do cool things as well.
Thank you guys so much. So if you guys,
Can I say something really quick?
yeah, sure, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just to piggyback off of Anthony, which is pretty funny. So I actually, and it didn't hit me until you said what you did, and I was like, hey, I did something too when I was in high school. I actually had the opportunity to, when I was in high school, to actually intern for Congressman John Lewis, and I think that I did that my senior year of high school, and I was 17. So you have the opportunity to intern within your with a member of Congress. Well, really a member of Congress or a state legislator, as long as you do have to do the full process. You have to like fill out the application. And so one thing I will say, and one thing I want to charge you guys to do is, if you can, is reach out to a representative, reach out to your state representative, or reach out to your member of Congress and say, hey, you know, I would love to be able to have a discussion with you, or hey, I'd love to have a town hall meeting with you to be able to discuss the issues and see, you know, why exactly did you decide to become a member of Congress, or why exactly did you choose to run, you know, and that way that you guys can have that understanding of the political process, but also to hear about, you know, hear from your, like from home, you know, to hear how they're affecting your communities. So that's something that you guys are interested in. I would definitely say, you know, do it. And it also shows that like you are truly interested, and it also will help you to mold, you know, what exactly you wanted to. I will say that if it wasn't for interning with Congressman John Lewis, my senior year of high school, I wouldn't have went to Spelman as a political science major. I wouldn't have decided that I wanted to go into politics if it wasn't for him and it wasn't for my opportunities being in that office. So you never know, you know, any type of experience, any like your own experiences will help to shape you into the part and shape and mold you into the person that you want to be. So, you know, go on a limb and reach out and, you know, try to intern, because that may just mold your political career. That may just mold, you know, exactly what you want to do. I know me and Anthony decided, I think at an early age, that we wanted to get into politics, and look at where we are now. So that's something I will say.
Thank you guys so much. I completely, that is amazing to me. So if you guys are just joining us, we just talked about how even as a young person, you can remain involved in your community by interning for an elected official, or by staying informed through reading, which I am also a history nerd, so I can completely resonate with that. Like, I love reading books about history and about just the like historical events. So I completely agree with that. Our next question. So over the past couple of months, I've come across people who have mentioned that, you know, they haven't voted yet, or, you know, all of those kinds of topics. So what would you say to somebody who hasn't voted before to convince them of the importance of voting?
Okay, I'm gonna be real. The first thing I'm gonna do, the first thing I would say is, one, check your privilege, right? Because if you decide not to vote, then there's some type of privilege that you do have. As a Black woman, and I unfortunately don't have the privilege to be able to decide that, no, I don't want to vote. Why? Because I know that the system is against me. And so in order for me to combat the system, I have to do what? I have to go out and vote, and I have to get the people that are part of the system that is against me out, so I can bring people that are for people like me into the system, right? And so that's the first thing that I would say. But also, you know, it may just be that they're not educated. Everyone, I love that when everyone tells me like, oh, I'm not into politics. Politics isn't my thing. Because really, I would say that politics controls your everyday life, right? And as much as we like to say that it doesn't, it does, right? I'll never forget when I was interning with Toyota and we were talking about international trade, and I was like, well, it was NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And I remember saying like, wow, this is really how this works. Like, you know, if when the steel and aluminum tariffs, actually we placed steel and aluminum tariffs on other countries, the tariffs taxes, we placed it on other countries, then the price of goods that were being imported in from those countries were increased. And so then it was like, okay, now what I was paying for, you know, a toothbrush for $1, I'm now paying $5 for that same toothbrush because of the political process, because of the international trade agreements. So it's really just knowing about that, like knowing that politics controls how you eat, where you sleep, it controls where you're able to work, how you know, the type of jobs that you'll have to have. You know, yeah, we may be young and that, or, you know, you guys may be young and that may not really affect you right then and there, but it'll affect you, it'll affect your parents, it'll affect your grandparents, it'll affect your future children. And so if you want to make a change within this world, you have to get out and you have to vote. And so really that's just one thing, you know, that's what I say to everyone that tells me that, oh, I'm not voting, or, oh, my vote doesn't matter. Because if your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try so hard to suppress your vote. And that's the honest truth. And so you have to know that, hey, the system is against me, let me get out and vote. And even if the system isn't against you, if if that's the case, then still just think about, you know, the friends that you have, the family members that you have, or anyone that is impacted by voting. You should want to be able to create a better life for them and to help them out in the long time future. So that's just really all I have to say about it.
You know, everything that you said is absolutely on point and on brand, I think. And so for me, one of the things that I try to make real to folks is whatever you care about is tied to voting, right? And it's as simple as that. And a lot of times, Avia, the person that says, well, I don't feel like voting, or I don't think my vote matters, especially if they're a man, and a Black man at that, I always challenge them, because for far too long, Black women have been, you know, holding down the Black community for a long time. And that's great that we've had them as our backbone for so long. But when will men step up and be men and be leaders and take charge and do the things that they're supposed to be doing? You know, men like to be, you know, breadwinners. They like to be the leaders of the household and all those things, if you're in a traditional sense. Well, then if you're going to lead your household, you should be leading your household to the poll. You should be leading your family to the polls. You should be leading your friends to the poll. You know, it's as simple as that. But even if you're not a man and if you're not Black, think about this. Whatever issue you care about is tied to voting, right? If you care about that pothole that's up your street, Joe Biden or Trump, whoever wins on next week, they're not the ones that you have to worry about in terms of fixing the pothole. It's the person that's your comptroller or your county commissioner that's going to be the one that's going to allocate the money for the people to come and fix your roads. You know, and understanding that, thinking about, are you tired of your schools having lackluster healthcare, lackluster education? That's tied to who's on the school board, which you have a direct link to by voting. Right? If you're tired of how your city or your county spends the money, that's tied to the commissioner, which you can vote for. That's tied to the mayor, which you can vote for. The city council members who pass the budget, that's all tied to you voting. If you're tired of the way policing is done in your precinct, a lot of the times the police commissioner or the chief of police, depending on where you're at, is someone who's elected by you, right? So understanding that every issue that you bring up, if you care about how much, your grandmother pays in terms of prescription drugs, and if she's going to be able to pay for her rent or be able to pay for her insulin, that's directly tied to voting. And the last thing I'd say is elections have consequences, right? Who is at the decision-making table is a direct result of your voting, and who is going to have your interest at heart when they're deciding, are we going to take a pay cut, or are we going to pay our teachers more? Are we going to cut funding for schools? Are we going to cut funding for healthcare? Are we going to make it harder for people to vote? That's all done by people who are elected by you through your voting, right? Even if you think about electoral districts, right? Because we're in a census year, right? 2020. If I wanted to make sure we raise that point. We're in a census year, so that means that next year there's going to be a lot of redistricting based on people that were elected into office by you. So if you are unsure about the way that these political districts are gerrymandered or the way that they're being drawn, guess what? Who you vote in is going to have a direct say on how that district is going to be redrawn or not redrawn.
And also, one thing I want to say is we are currently in a pandemic right now, right? And we've seen that, I don't want to say this, never mind. Well, we've seen how the government has handled this pandemic. We've only received, and I know we're speaking to the younger generation, but we've only received, or your parents have only received $1,200, to last. We've been in a pandemic for about, we've been in a pandemic for about 8 months now, and $1,200 is that's all we get, whereas other countries are receiving stimulus checks every month that's worth like from $1,000 to $5,000 to be able to supplement, the fact that they've lost their jobs, the fact that, or not even that, just to be able to supplement their everyday lives. So if you don't care about, if you don't think that your vote matters, well, think about what this current state that America is in right now, and that if you don't vote, what the current state of America is going to look like after the election. So it's really just knowing that, knowing what's going on in America right now, and knowing that you have the opportunity to make a change, and that you're deciding not to make that change.
What's beautiful about what you said, Arriyanna, is that it's so true that we are, newsflash, in a pandemic. I don't know if anybody has been under a rock for the past 8 months, but we've been in a pandemic, but not just a health pandemic, right? We're battling 3 different fronts. There's the health piece, the education piece, and then you have this social injustice and racial relations piece that's really been around for a while, but now we're starting to see a resurgence of it after we've seen so much state-sanctioned violence, and people are saying enough is enough, right? A lot of the things that we're talking about, healthcare disparities, education disparities, access to capital, and economic disparities, and even racial and systemic racism, and those types of disparities and injustices, these are not new. What we have seen is an exacerbation of that because of the handling of various sectors of this by different parts of the country.
Technical difficulties. Sorry, y'all.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. So but we've seen an exacerbation of this by different parts of the government and their response to things that are going on. So it's just really been an entire onslaught of things that we've had to combat as a community and as a country, and how, again, like I said, elections have consequences. The people that you put into office will be responsive to those things. And so, just thinking about that and considering whether or not you're going to vote, you have to weigh those things as well.
Thank you guys so much. And that not only brings attention to presidential elections, but also midterm elections as well. Okay, so we have a little less than 10 minutes left. So do you guys have any final words for young people about voting in this election and elections in the future?
You can go first, Ari.
Okay. So it's just simple. Get out and vote. research the people that's on the ballot. I think something that's fun that I also didn't say earlier is, you can view your ballots online. So even if you're not old enough to vote, you can kind of go in and look at the ballots and see who's on the ballot, and then actually go and research those people, because just because you're not able to vote right now, they may run again, and research the issues and just know what exactly you're voting for, know the people and the issues that they are bringing to the table, and get out and vote. Talk to your parents, talk to your family members, talk to anyone that has stated that they don't want to vote or they're not going to vote in this upcoming election, and let them know that it's imperative that they exercise their right to vote, because there's so many people that have died, or so many people that have fought for the right for us to vote.
Everything that Ira said is completely important to mention. And as well, I want to just say that your voice matters, right? Your existence and your livelihood and your lived experience matters. And so I want to say to young people, especially, whether you're 18 or you're younger than that, that you have a voice in what's going on as well, because who's going to be in office is going to impact you in more ways than you can possibly realize, right? We've only talked about just a small portion of things, but, even something as simple as, who's going to be your teacher and how much they're going to get paid, all the way up into how much your parents are able to receive on their federal taxes for their returns, so they can, get you the things that they need to provide for you, right? So many things are at stake, right? Even if you think about, if you're in high school right now and you want to go to college, or any kind of vocational school or post-secondary education, how am I going to pay for that, right? And, are people positioning themselves in a way that are going to make it easier for people like me or like you or whoever to get access to things that will help them, make money, be socially mobile, economically mobile, but also to achieve the things that they want to do. Like I said at the beginning of this, we all want the same things. We want to be able to have a family. We want to be able to own a home. We want to be able to take vacations in the summers. We want to be able to, provide for the family that we have. We want to be able to live out our dreams, right? And do the things that set us on fire. But we also want to go and be able to walk down the street without having to be looked over our shoulder, or the fear of being stopped by a police officer, and that may be our last interaction ever, period, right? We also want to be able to, apply for jobs and not have to worry about whether somebody's going to accept my resume based off what my name is, right? We don't want to have to worry about being second guessed because of what zip code we lived in. Those things are realities for a lot of people, and we want to make sure that as we're moving the culture and the community forward, that everybody understand that they have a stake in this, right? Different generations have different missions. When we think about millennials versus Gen Z versus Gen X and baby boomers, everybody has different fights in this struggle for justice and equality across the board. But what we all can do is help one another reach that common goal, which is justice, equality, and fairness for every person. So, I would encourage everybody to, examine where you are and to understand the issues that are going on. And if there are things that are set you on fire and that make you excited to be a part of this process, then pursue those things, right? Whether it's elections, if it's campaigns, if it's voting, if it's, all those things, or even if it's something like education reform or healthcare reform, do those things that make you passionate, because, we need you in this fight, and we need you to understand that you have value and that your voice matters.
Thank you guys so much. This was such a great experience. I learned so much from you guys. So just thank you, thank you, thank you. Would you guys like to, tell people like where they can find you on social media or anything like that?
Well, sure. I'll go ahead and go. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, if you have a LinkedIn, at Engage with Impact. That's all one thing, all lowercase. On Twitter, it's an N instead of a E at the beginning, so Engage instead of everything else. But, you can find us anywhere else. You can also, on those sites, you can find our website. You can, book time to talk with us. and we'll help you, through things that you're trying to do personally or professionally, that you have projects going on. And we want to see young people, pursue their passions and pursue, their careers in ways that they don't feel that they're inhibited. So that's why we really started this organization over a year ago, and have been happy to partner with AMP on multiple occasions to, let people know, especially young people, know that they matter, they have a voice, and it doesn't matter where you come from, you can be what you want to be.
Well, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's the Black Girl Politico, and we have a Twitter, but it's my name. But if you type in the Black Girl Politico on Twitter, you'll be able to find me as well. But the tagline name is Arriyanna Patton, and I can type that or put that somewhere. And then also I'll be creating a Facebook page today, so you can find me on Facebook as well as the Black Girl Politico. And so pretty much if you have any questions or concerns, or you want to know about the political process, you can always reach out to me. You can DM me. You can DM me on Instagram or Twitter and just ask me questions, and I'll be happy to help. But if you want to see some type of post or some type of informational about the political process, or a bill that's currently before Congress, and you have some issues with it, you can always reach out to me, and I can be able to talk to you about it. So just hit me up.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So that concludes our live stream. Thank you again so much for all you guys talked about, and I really appreciate it, and I am really grateful to have you guys here.
Avia and the team at AMP, thank you so much for having us. This was so much fun. I know Arriyanna and I'm not going to speak for her, but I know that we had a great time on our end over at Engagement Impact, and happy to do this again anytime. And even after the election, we're happy to do stuff. But yeah, this was so much fun.